All right, listen up, because what I'm about to tell you could change your life forever. Have you ever felt like something's off in your relationships, but you just can't put your finger on it? Like no matter what you do, you're always the one apologizing, always the one feeling guilty, always the one bending over backward while the other person somehow walks away in control. Let me tell you something, manipulation is real, and the scariest part, most people don't even know what's happening to them. It sneaks into your life, bit by bit, disguised as love, disguised as friendship, disguised as care. But make no mistake, if you're not aware of the signs, you will find yourself drained, confused, and completely under someone else's control. Today, I'm going to show you 5 signs you're being manipulated without even realizing it, and once you see them, you'll never unsee them. You're going to walk out of here with the power to spot manipulation, break free from toxic cycles, and take back control of your mind, your emotions, and your life. And we're starting with one of the most dangerous tactics manipulators use, guilt tripping. Guilt tripping is one of the most powerful and insidious forms of manipulation. It operates by preying on your emotions, making you feel responsible for someone else's happiness, actions, or even circumstances. The person using guilt as a tool doesn't ask directly for what they want. Instead, they frame the situation in a way that makes you feel bad for not complying with their wishes. They might remind you of past favors they've done for you, or imply that your refusal to meet their demands is a personal betrayal. Over time, this repeated guilt tripping can wear you down, leading you to say yes even when you want to say no, just to avoid the emotional weight of disappointing them. A classic example of guilt tripping happens in relationships, whether romantic, familial, or friendships. Suppose you've made a decision to take some personal time for yourself, but a friend says, "Wow, I guess I just don't matter to you anymore. You always have time for others, but not for me." The immediate reaction most people have is to feel bad. You start questioning if you're actually neglecting them, even though you know you're not. This emotional manipulation forces you into a position where you feel compelled to prove that you care by putting their needs above your own. Parents and family members can also use guilt tripping in subtle and overt ways. Imagine a situation where a parent tells their child, "After all I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" Or they might say, "I guess I'll just suffer alone since you're too busy to help." The child, regardless of their age, may immediately feel responsible for alleviating their parent's sadness, even if their initial decision was completely reasonable. The weight of guilt becomes overwhelming, making them feel obligated to act even against their own best interests. In workplaces, guilt tripping is a common tactic used by manipulative bosses or colleagues. A manager might say, "I really thought I could count on you, but I guess I was wrong." This kind of statement isn't a direct order, but it works to pressure the employee into compliance. Instead of setting boundaries and saying, "I can't take on more work right now," the employee feels emotionally burdened and may take on tasks they don't have the capacity for just to avoid the feeling of letting someone down. The real danger of guilt tripping is that it exploits your natural empathy and desire to be a good person. The manipulator weaponizes your kindness, making you feel like you are selfish or uncaring if you don't do what they want. But the reality is, being manipulated into action through guilt isn't the same as making a genuine choice to help. True generosity comes from a place of free will, not emotional coercion. People who consistently use guilt as a tool of manipulation understand exactly what they are doing. They know that if they make you feel bad enough, you will eventually cave. This creates a cycle where they continue to use guilt as a tactic, and you continue to comply just to avoid the discomfort. Over time, this damages self-esteem and fosters resentment, because deep down, you recognize that you're not acting out of genuine desire, but out of a conditioned response to avoid guilt. To recognize and break free from guilt tripping, it's important to trust your own judgment and emotions. If you feel like someone is making you responsible for their happiness or problems, take a step back. Ask yourself, am I really doing something wrong, or is this person just making me feel like I am? Learning to say no without guilt is a crucial skill. When you set boundaries, a manipulator may escalate their guilt tactics, but standing firm sends a message that you won't be controlled by emotional blackmail. Gaslighting? Gaslighting is a particularly dangerous and psychologically damaging form of manipulation. It works by making you question your own reality, memory, and perceptions. The goal of the manipulator is simple: to make you doubt yourself so much that you become dependent on their version of events. Once they succeed in making you question your own mind, they gain control over you. This tactic is often used in abusive relationships, toxic workplaces, and even by authority figures who want to maintain power. Gaslighting doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process where the manipulator chips away at your confidence, subtly distorting reality until you don't trust your own judgment. It often begins with small lies or contradictions. For example, you might bring up something they said in a previous conversation, and they respond with, "I never said that. You must be remembering it wrong." At first, you might feel confused, but you brush it off. Then it happens again and again. Over time, you start questioning yourself. Maybe you are remembering it wrong. Maybe you are being too sensitive. This is exactly what the manipulator wants, to make you doubt yourself so much that you stop challenging them. A key feature of gaslighting is that it makes you feel like you are the problem. Let's say you confront someone about their behavior, and instead of acknowledging it, they turn it around on you. They might say, "You're crazy, you're always making things up," or "Why do you always have to be so dramatic?" Suddenly, the conversation isn't about their actions anymore, it's about you and your supposed flaws. You find yourself defending your sanity instead of addressing the real issue. Gaslighting can be incredibly destructive in romantic relationships. Imagine being in a relationship where every time you express a concern, your partner dismisses it. If you say, "I feel like you've been distant lately," and they respond with, "You're imagining things. You're just paranoid," you begin to question your perception of reality. The more they deny, the more you start wondering if you really are overreacting. Over time, you may completely lose trust in your own instincts and rely on the manipulator to tell you what's real. In workplaces, gaslighting can be used by toxic bosses or colleagues to maintain control. If you bring up an issue with a project or recall instructions differently, they might say, "I never told you to do that," or "You must have misunderstood." The goal is to make you second guess yourself so much that you stop pushing back and just do what they say without question. In extreme cases, gaslighting can lead to a loss of confidence and even anxiety or depression, because constantly questioning reality is exhausting. Gaslighting isn't just verbal. It can also be actions that contradict what you know to be true. For example, let's say someone is treating you poorly, but in front of others, they act loving and supportive. When you bring up their behavior in private, they act shocked and say, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm always kind to you." This manipulation makes you doubt your experience because their actions in public don't match how they treat you behind closed doors. What makes gaslighting so effective is that it isolates the victim. Once you stop trusting your own perceptions, you may start relying on the manipulator to interpret reality for you. They become your source of truth, and that's exactly how they maintain control. By the time you realize what's happening, it can feel like you're trapped, unable to distinguish what's real from what's been fabricated. Recognizing gaslighting is the first step to breaking free from it. If someone is constantly making you doubt yourself, take a step back. Keep a journal of conversations and events so you have written proof of what actually happened. Talk to trusted friends or family members to get an outside perspective. When you feel like you're losing your grip on reality, remind yourself that your feelings and experiences are valid. The moment you start trusting yourself again, the manipulator loses their power over you. Passive-aggressive behavior. Passive-aggressive behavior is one of the most subtle yet damaging forms of manipulation. Unlike direct confrontation, which allows for clear communication, passive-aggressiveness works by creating confusion, frustration, and self-doubt in the target. It is a form of indirect resistance where someone expresses their displeasure not through open discussion, but through sarcasm, silent treatment, procrastination, or backhanded comments. The aim is to exert control and make the other person feel guilty or uncertain without taking responsibility for their own feelings or behavior. One of the most common manifestations of passive aggressiveness is sarcasm disguised as humor. A person who feels resentful or envious might say something cutting but frame it as a joke. For example, if you achieve something significant at work, they might respond with, "Wow, I guess some of us have all the luck," accompanied by a forced smile. On the surface, it seems lighthearted, but beneath it, there is resentment and an attempt to downplay your achievement. When confronted, they will likely say, "I was just kidding, you take everything too seriously. This puts you in a position where you feel like the problem rather than addressing the fact that they are using sarcasm as a weapon. Silent treatment is another powerful passive-aggressive tactic. Instead of expressing their feelings openly, the manipulator withholds communication and affection to punish the other person. This can be especially damaging in close relationships as it creates an environment of emotional uncertainty. You may find yourself constantly guessing what you did wrong or trying to fix a situation that was never clearly explained to you. The worst part is that when you finally ask what's wrong, they respond with nothing, making you feel crazy for even asking. This kind of behavior fosters anxiety as the target becomes hyper-aware of every action, trying to avoid another bout of silence. Procrastination and deliberate inefficiency are also classic passive-aggressive behaviors. A person who doesn't want to do something but doesn't want to say no outright might agree to the request but then intentionally delay or perform the task poorly. For example, if you ask a colleague for help on a project and they don't want to assist, instead of declining, they might say, "Sure, I'll get to it," but then keep postponing it until it's too late to be useful. When confronted, they act as if they forgot or claim they were too busy, leaving you frustrated while they avoid accountability. This behavior is also common in relationships where one partner feels resentment but does not express it directly. Instead of saying, "I feel upset that you didn't spend time with me," they might refuse to engage in conversation, purposely delay responding to texts, or be distant without explaining why. When the other person finally asks what's wrong, they may hear something dismissive like, "Oh, nothing. I just thought you were too busy for me." The goal is to make the other person feel guilty and to gain control over their emotions without directly addressing the issue. Passive aggressiveness thrives in environments where open communication is discouraged or where the manipulator fears confrontation. By being indirect, they avoid having to take responsibility for their own emotions while making others feel unsettled or guilty. It can be particularly toxic in workplaces where a passive-aggressive colleague or manager can create a stressful atmosphere by refusing to give clear feedback, withholding important information, or setting people up for failure through intentional vagueness. This kind of behavior forces others into a constant state of second-guessing, leading to decreased confidence and productivity. A significant aspect of passive-aggressive behavior is that it allows the manipulator to maintain a false sense of innocence. Since their attacks are indirect, they can always deny any malicious intent. If confronted, they might claim that the target is overreacting, too sensitive, or imagining things. This not only invalidates the target's feelings, but also makes them question their own perceptions, making it harder to stand up for themselves. Because passive aggressiveness is so indirect, it can be difficult to recognize until its effects start accumulating. The constant need to interpret hidden meanings, the emotional drain from dealing with unspoken resentment, and the gradual erosion of confidence all contribute to an unhealthy dynamic where the target is left emotionally exhausted. Over time, this behavior can destroy trust in relationships, leaving one person feeling manipulated while the other continues to evade responsibility. Playing the victim. Playing the victim is a powerful manipulation tactic used to avoid accountability and shift blame onto others. People who engage in this behavior present themselves as helpless, misunderstood, or unfairly treated, even when their problems are self-inflicted. By positioning themselves as the victim, they deflect responsibility for their actions and make others feel obligated to rescue or accommodate them. This creates a dynamic where they receive sympathy and special treatment while avoiding any consequences for their behavior. One of the most common ways manipulators play the victim is by exaggerating their struggles or hardships. They might constantly talk about how difficult their life is, how no one understands them, or how the world is against them. While everyone faces challenges, these individuals use their difficulties as an excuse for bad behavior or as a tool to gain control over others. Instead of seeking solutions, they use their struggles to guilt people into doing things for them. For example, if they fail to meet a responsibility, they might say, "You have no idea how much I'm going through right now," instead of owning up to their mistake. In relationships, playing the victim is often used to manipulate a partner into feeling responsible for their emotions. If they are confronted about something hurtful they did, instead of acknowledging it, they might say, "I can't believe you're attacking me when I already feel so awful." Suddenly, the conversation shifts from their wrongdoing to their feelings, forcing their partner to comfort them instead of holding them accountable. This tactic is particularly effective because most people don't want to be seen as cruel or uncaring, so they back down to avoid making the person feel worse. This behavior is also common in friendships where one person constantly presents themselves as the victim of betrayal, mistreatment, or neglect. They might say things like, "I'm always there for you, but no one is ever there for me," creating a sense of guilt that pressures others to prove their loyalty. Over time, their friends feel trapped in a cycle of constantly trying to please them, even if the demands are unreasonable. At work, victim playing can be used to evade criticism or responsibility. If an employee consistently fails to meet deadlines, instead of admitting poor time management, they might say, "No one ever considers how hard I have it. I'm drowning in work, but I guess no one cares." This shifts the focus away from their lack of accountability and onto their perceived suffering, making it difficult for others to hold them to the same standard as everyone else. A manipulative manager might also use this tactic to avoid taking responsibility for their leadership failures, saying things like, "I'm doing my best, but my team just doesn't support me." Another way victim playing manifests is through emotional blackmail. The manipulator might threaten self-harm, extreme sadness, or personal crisis whenever they don't get their way. They create a situation where saying no feels impossible because it seems like it will cause them emotional devastation. Someone who uses this tactic may say things like, "If you leave me, I don't know what I'll do," forcing the other person to stay in the relationship out of fear. This form of manipulation is especially damaging because it traps the victim in a position where they feel responsible for the manipulator's well-being. What makes playing the victim so effective is that it taps into people's natural empathy. Most individuals want to help those who are struggling, and manipulators exploit this kindness. They create scenarios where they appear helpless and misunderstood, drawing people in to support them while simultaneously avoiding accountability for their own actions. The longer someone is caught in this cycle, the more difficult it becomes to recognize the manipulation at play. Withholding affection. Withholding affection is a powerful manipulation tactic that exploits emotional needs to gain control over someone. It is a form of psychological and emotional punishment where love, validation, or attention is given or taken away based on whether the other person complies with the manipulator's desires. This tactic can be subtle or overt, but the impact is always the same. It creates a sense of insecurity, making the target feel desperate for approval and willing to do whatever it takes to regain the affection that was taken away. One of the most common ways this manifests is through sudden shifts in warmth and coldness. A person who uses withholding as a manipulation tool will be loving, attentive, and kind when they want something, but the moment their needs aren't met, they withdraw affection completely. The shift can feel jarring. One day they are affectionate, telling you how much they love and appreciate you. The next day they are cold, distant, and uninterested, leaving you confused about what you did wrong. The inconsistency creates an emotional roller coaster, making you anxious and eager to regain their affection. This tactic is particularly damaging in romantic relationships, where emotional closeness and intimacy play a crucial role. A partner who withholds affection might refuse to say, "I love you," stop showing physical affection, or give the silent treatment as a way to punish the other person. If you bring up concerns or set boundaries, they may suddenly withdraw, making you feel guilty for standing up for yourself. Instead of addressing issues directly, they condition you to associate conflict or disagreement with emotional rejection, discouraging you from expressing your needs in the future. In family dynamics, withholding affection can be a lifelong pattern. A parent may shower a child with love and praise when they behave in a way that aligns with their expectations, but the moment the child expresses independence or disagreement, the warmth disappears. The child learns that love is conditional, something that must be earned rather than freely given. As they grow older, this belief may lead them into relationships where they tolerate emotional withholding as normal, accepting love that comes with conditions rather than unconditional support. Friendships are not immune to this form of manipulation either. A friend who uses withholding as a tactic may suddenly become distant without explanation if they feel slighted. Instead of communicating their feelings openly, they ignore messages, act indifferent, or treat you as if you don't exist. When you try to address the issue, they may act as if nothing is wrong, making you question whether you're overreacting. The goal is to create anxiety and insecurity, ensuring that you work harder to earn back their approval. In workplaces, withholding can take the form of emotional validation or professional recognition. A manipulative boss might withhold praise, support, or even eye contact as a way to control employees. Instead of acknowledging accomplishments, they remain distant and unresponsive, making workers feel like they are constantly falling short. This creates an environment where employees overextend themselves, seeking approval that never comes. The absence of positive reinforcement becomes a tool to keep people in a state of uncertainty, making them more dependent on the manipulators' occasional moments of validation. This pattern can also be seen in social groups where someone withholds inclusion as a way to exert control. They may exclude certain people from plans, ignore messages in group chats, or act indifferent when someone expresses excitement or good news. The message is clear: acceptance is conditional, and anyone who does not conform to their expectations risks being left out. This creates a dynamic where people feel pressured to conform, fearing that any misstep could lead to emotional exclusion. One of the most dangerous aspects of withholding affection is that it creates an addiction to approval. Because the manipulator provides warmth and validation intermittently, the target becomes conditioned to crave those rare moments of affection. This is known as intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological principle used in gambling, where unpredictable rewards keep people hooked. The inconsistency creates a powerful emotional bond, making it difficult to break free from the cycle. The target keeps hoping that if they try harder, say the right things, or avoid upsetting the manipulator, the affection will return. Withholding can also be used as a form of control in arguments. Instead of discussing an issue, the manipulator may pull away emotionally, refusing to engage or acknowledge the other person's feelings. This tactic forces the target into a position where they feel responsible for fixing the situation, even if they were not at fault. Over time, this dynamic silences the target, making them afraid to bring up concerns or advocate for their own needs. Sexual intimacy is another area where withholding can be used as a manipulation tool. A partner may refuse physical closeness as a form of punishment, creating an emotional distance that leaves the other person feeling rejected and insecure. Instead of communicating openly about their feelings, they use intimacy as a bargaining tool, giving or withdrawing affection based on whether their partner meets their demands. This creates a power imbalance where one person holds control over the emotional and physical connection, leaving the other feeling helpless and desperate for approval. The emotional toll of withholding affection is profound. It creates feelings of unworthiness, self-doubt, and anxiety. The target may begin questioning whether they are too needy, too demanding, or not good enough. The manipulator reinforces this belief by acting as if the withdrawal is justified, making the target believe they must change themselves to regain affection. This slowly erodes self-esteem, leading to a dependency where the target believes their happiness is tied to the manipulator's approval. In some cases, the manipulator may not even be fully aware that they're using this tactic. They may have learned from past relationships or family dynamics that love is a tool to be given or taken away based on behavior. However, whether intentional or not, the result is the same. The target feels emotionally starved, constantly seeking validation that remains inconsistent and conditional. Over time, this manipulation leads to an unhealthy dependency where the target feels unable to function without the manipulator's approval. Their sense of self-worth becomes tied to the rare moments of affection they receive, making them willing to endure long periods of coldness in the hopes of experiencing warmth again. The longer they remain in this cycle, the harder it becomes to break free as their emotional resilience is gradually worn down. Now listen to me, manipulation is only powerful when you don't see it. But now you know the game, you know the tricks, you know the signs. So what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to keep tolerating toxic behaviors? Or are you going to stand up, take control, and refuse to be anyone's puppet? You have the power to set boundaries. You have the power to walk away from manipulation. You have the power to create relationships that are built on respect, trust, and authenticity. Because the truth is, real love, real friendship, and real leadership never come with conditions. This is your moment. This is your wake-up call. No more manipulation, no more mind games, no more being controlled. It's time to step up, take charge, and own your life. This is Tony Robbins Track, and if this message hit home for you, make sure you subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, start taking action today. Let's go.